We're not just pulling back the curtain, we're tearing it straight off its hinges. What you're about to witness is not love. It's not passion. It's not chemistry. It only disguises itself in the language of romance. It borrows the scent of affection, the softness of intimacy, the heartbeat of desire, but at its core, it's none of those things. What lies beneath is cold, surgical, and methodical. This is not about attraction. This is about domination, a psychological conquest masked with tenderness. And no, this isn't a tutorial. It's a revelation, a warning, a mirror held up to a manipulation so subtle, so precise, that you don't even realize it's happening until your thoughts aren't yours anymore. We live in a culture obsessed with the performance of love. We're taught to see seduction as charming, magnetic, almost heroic. We idealize it in books, films, social media posts where obsession is sold as passion. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Behind some of the most intense romantic stories, there's a blueprint of control, a calculated framework built not to connect, but to capture, to override your instincts, to mold your perception. This isn't about someone falling for you. It's about someone designing your fall from the very beginning. From a darker Machiavellian perspective, seduction is not some mystical energy. It's not magic. It's a tool, a blade, precision forged and aimed straight at the psyche. Emotionally invasive, strategically deployed. It doesn't aim to win your heart, it targets your mind. Every text, every delayed response, every lingering look and perfectly timed compliment, none of it is spontaneous. It's choreography, a quiet, unseen psychological operation where you are the battlefield and your emotions are being played like piano keys. This is the anatomy of psychological seduction, how it slithers past your defenses while dressed in charm. What follows is a map, a breakdown of the hidden game most never notice they're in. We begin with the core belief that underpins all of it. The manipulator sees the human heart, not as sacred or complex, but as predictable. To them, emotions are not mysteries to be respected. They're formulas to be hacked. They observe. They study. They memorize the rhythm of your soul, not to dance with it, but to orchestrate it. They locate your deepest fears, your longing to be chosen, your fear of rejection, your hunger to feel understood, and then they slowly build a mirrored version of everything you ever wanted, not to love you, but to control you. This is not seduction. This is strategy, a war of attention, vulnerability, and power. And before you even realize you've been disarmed, your sense of self has been rewritten. By the time the mask slips, by the time you question what's real and what was just performance, you're already entangled, dependent, hooked. This script exists to make sure that doesn't happen. It's not a guide for manipulators. It's a warning for the manipulated. Because once you understand the game, you no longer have to play it. Step one is never loud. It doesn't begin with fireworks or grand gestures. It begins in silence, with quiet, surgical observation. The manipulator isn't interested in your surface. They're listening for the tremble in your voice when rejection is mentioned, the hesitation in your eyes when your worth is questioned. They aren't hunting for trauma that screams. They're searching for wounds that whisper. Insecurities so deeply embedded, even you treat them like personality traits. The girl who only feels valuable when she's praised. The guy who always needs to be right to feel in control. The one who jokes about abandonment but flinches when someone leaves the room. These aren't quirks. They're open doors. The manipulator takes notes in silence. Every glance, every sigh, every micro-reaction is recorded like coordinates on a map. They learn you not to understand, but to penetrate. Then begins the infiltration. But it won't look like war. It'll look like warmth, comfort, familiarity. They don't offer empathy, they replicate it. Their kindness is rehearsed, their charm methodical. They mirror your fears back to you with just enough variation to make it feel like connection. It's not real understanding, it's engineered intimacy. And the more precise the reflection, the more convinced you are that you've found someone who finally gets you. You drop your defenses. You let them in. And once they're in, everything changes. Suddenly they become your compass, your anchor, your direction. Their praise becomes your dopamine. Their attention, your oxygen. You start building meaning around their presence. Your identity begins to reorganize itself around their approval. But just as the bond begins to feel secure, they pull away. They go cold. They delay replies. They change their tone. Their eyes stop meeting yours. And your nervous system panics. You scramble to fix it. You replay every interaction, wondering what went wrong. You try harder, bend further, love louder. This is the push-pull loop. And it doesn't just hurt, it rewires you. Your brain starts associating uncertainty with desire. Their absence becomes more addictive than their presence ever was. And now they don't even need to try. You're the one working to stay chosen. You're the one abandoning yourself just to be near them. Dependence doesn't arrive all at once. It creeps in until it feels like love. History has already warned us. Look at the story of Samson and Delilah. Strip away the romantic fog, and what do you see? A man with immense power, undone not by violence, but by seduction with intent. Delilah wasn't an accidental heartbreaker. She was sent, purposeful, calculated. She didn't overpower him, she softened him, slowly, systematically. She didn't wield the sword she wielded. Patience, repetition, emotional leverage. She extracted his vulnerability not with force, but with intimacy. And once he revealed the secret, once he exposed the root of his strength, she didn't hesitate. She struck with precision. And what followed wasn't just physical defeat, it was psychological collapse. His strength gone, his trust shattered, his identity dismantled. That's the real danger. Manipulators don't destroy you from the outside. They invite you to hand over the keys yourself. By this point, the game is no longer about seduction. It's about control. The manipulator has shifted from influence to full-scale dominance. They no longer chase your attention, they own it. They present themselves as your sole emotional refuge. No one understands you like they do. No one soothes your chaos like they can. They become the medicine and the poison. With one hand, they comfort you. With the other, they twist your fear of abandonment like a blade against your ribs. And then begins the subtle isolation. It's not dramatic. It's gradual. A whisper here, your friends don't get you. A slight pause when you mention family. A distant look when you talk about old anchors. Until one day, without realizing how, You're alone, cut off from your emotional safety nets. And yet, you don't feel kidnapped. You feel chosen. You feel like you willingly chose them above all else. That's the brilliance and the horror. They never raise their voice. They never issue threats. They don't have to. Your terror of losing their affection becomes the most powerful leash. And the worst part? You tighten it yourself. The manipulator creates a dependency so strong, so woven into your identity that freedom feels like loss. Your sense of self becomes fused with their validation. You no longer ask, "Is this love?" You ask, "What can I do to stop them from leaving?" That's not love. That's psychological captivity. And once that absolute dependence is secured, the manipulator unleashes the final stage, what Machiavelli would have called the most ruthless form of power. Do so much damage that retaliation becomes impossible. But they don't need to burn your house down. They burn you from the inside, piece by piece, quietly. They dismantle your sense of reality. They don't make you scream, they make you doubt. You don't escape because you're afraid of their wrath. You stay because you're terrified of the void they'll leave behind. Their withdrawal becomes the punishment. Their silence becomes the prison. And eventually you don't even know what freedom looks like anymore. This isn't just emotional abuse, it's psychic erosion. You're not shackled by their actions. You're shackled by your hope. And that's the final injury. You become complicit in your own entrapment. You beg for the very person who's breaking you to be the one to heal you. You cling to the hand that's undoing you, because their presence, as painful as it is, still feels more bearable than their absence. But here's the ugly truth behind the illusion of victory. No one wins. The target is left fractured, stripped of their innocence, riddled with self-doubt and unable to trust. Love becomes something to fear. Intimacy becomes synonymous with manipulation. Their emotional compass is shattered. But the manipulator? They don't walk away whole either. What once felt like triumph begins to taste like rot. Resentment festers. Disgust sets in not just for the target, but for themselves. They've built a connection so fragile, so artificial, that even they can't stand to live inside it. Their weapon backfires. The cage they forged becomes their own, and the bond, once intoxicating, turns toxic for both sides. Understand this deeply. What you've just heard isn't a blueprint for behavior. It's a survival map. It's not for the manipulators. It's for the minds they prey on. This is your internal alarm system, the siren that sounds when something feels off, but you can't quite explain why. Now that you've seen the psychological machinery, the subtle tactics, the emotional traps, the staged tenderness, you're no longer an easy target. You've stepped out of the fog, and when you can see, you can choose. That changes everything. But here's the question that matters most. How do you catch it in real life? Not just in hindsight? How do you differentiate genuine connection from carefully curated illusion? What does real warmth feel like when you've been burned by artificial light? The answer isn't easy. Manipulation wears the mask of love. It mimics empathy. It sounds like care. It feels like destiny. So your job now is to learn the difference between truth and technique, between someone holding space for you and someone occupying it to control you. You don't need to panic, you need to recognize. to read the performance before it reaches the final act, because once you recognize the script, you can interrupt it. Once you notice the choreography, you can step off the stage. That alone shatters the illusion. The manipulator loses power when you stop playing your assigned role. That is the essence of philosophical defense, protecting your soul not with aggression, but with clarity. Awareness is your armor. Discernment is your shield. You don't need to fight fire with fire, you simply stop fueling the flame. When you refuse to participate in games designed to make you question your worth, the game collapses. And when you walk away from systems built on emotional leverage, you reclaim your selfhood. You return to center. You become rooted in something manipulation can't touch: your autonomy, your self-respect, your peace. In that return, something beautiful happens. Real intimacy becomes possible again. Not the kind that manipulates or coerces, but the kind that respects, holds, and nurtures. You don't have to be guarded forever. You just have to see clearly, because now that you've stepped behind the curtain, you'll never unsee the performance again. And that awareness, it doesn't make you colder. It makes you free.